Enkiri here. Ever since I made my video about using the Snatch strip high pull as a way to build the upper back and traps while garnering the athletic benefits of the Olympic lifts, I've had multiple requests for me to make a tutorial video on the high pull itself. So today, we're going to go over some of the major points about how to perform this exercise, both safely and effectively. So let's get to it. Now for our purposes today, I'm going to detail and demonstrate the Snatch grip high pull done from the hang at the pocket position. But there are several ways to perform this exercise. It can be done from the floor, which is the most technically complex variation because you have to traverse the transition over the knees and still settle into the power position with the barbell in the correct spot before beginning the second pull. It can be done from the low hang, which is a position below the knees. It can be done from the high hang, which is a position somewhere along the mid-thigh. It can be done from the pocket, which is the highest hang position and derives its name from the fact that you literally start to lift with the bar right around your pockets. And finally, it can also be done from any of these positions with the bar resting on blocks or pins, rather than hanging. So, as you can see, there are many variations. I prefer the pocket position simply because I'm not an Olympic lifter, and this variation has the shortest learning curve. It's the least technically demanding variation, which makes it easier to get in more volume, and the slight eccentric most closely resembles the eccentric phase of a jump, which leads me to believe it has the most carryover in that regard. So now that you know the what and the why, let's jump into the tutorial. When performing the snatch and its variations, you want the bar, when it's held at arm's length, to rest in a position that's just above the crease of the hip. You should be able to lift one of your legs without the bar impeding your ability to flex the hip. If the bar hits your thigh, then you need to widen your grip a little bit. If you're a bigger guy or have really long arms, you may need to take a pretty wide grip on the bar to achieve this, even potentially going as far as collar to collar. The crux of the movement here is the simultaneous extension of the hips and knees, known by Olympic lifters as the second pull, that's used to impart vertical momentum on the barbell and drive it upwards. Thus, in order to maximize performance during this portion of the lift, you want to position your feet in the stance that allows for you to create maximal power from those muscle groups. For most people, this stance is going to be close to the stance they would intuitively use for vertical jumping, as that's a display of pure vertical power. That stance is most likely going to be about hip width with a few degrees of external rotation at the feet. You may find it helpful to go right ahead and do a few vertical jumps just to see how you position your feet when you're not focusing on it, and then tweak your high pull setup from there until you find what's most comfortable and powerful. Personally, my heels are about the same distance apart whether I'm doing vertical jumps or high pulls, but I prefer for my feet to be externally rotated a little bit more for the high pulls. Like I said, use your jumping stance as your starting point and make minor tweaks from there. Now that you've taken your grip on the bar and found your perfect stance, you're ready to lift the bar up to the pocket position and get started. All the normal snatch grip deadlift cues apply here. If you need a refresher on how to properly and safely perform a snatch grip deadlift, you can check out my tutorial on my channel from a couple weeks ago. But the main points are, as always, to make sure you keep a neutral spine and get your hips down low and drive through the floor using the quads. Now that you're standing up with the bar at arm's length, it's time to execute the eccentric phase. Since we're not sliding the bar down our thighs at all, but rather keeping it in the pocket, the eccentric here should look very similar to the eccentric you would perform when executing a vertical jump. For me, the hip and knee angles are nearly identical. Now, my main focus here is pushing my hips back and getting some tension onto my hamstrings. A small to moderate amount of knee bend is also necessary, but that should occur naturally as you're essentially preparing to jump. The lats must also be contracted hard during this phase in order to keep the bar pushed in snug against the pelvis. Now for the part you've all been waiting for. With the knees flexed, the hips pushed back, and the barbell being held tightly to the body, you're now ready to begin the pull. With maximal and aggressive intent, your focus here should be on achieving a powerful, violent, and full extension of both the hips and the knees. At the apex of the movement, your body should be standing tall, completely extended, and at full attention. To beat a dead horse, this extension of the hips and knees is similar to that achieved during a vertical jump. However, instead of using the power created by these muscle groups to displace your own hips, you're using the power instead to displace the barbell. The arms should not be pulling during this phase, but rather they should be semi-relaxed. simply acting as hooks that connect your hips to the barbell. The less tension there is running through your arms, the more of the power generated by your hips and legs you'll be able to transfer into the barbell. This is why it's important to use straps for this lift. With the wide snatch grip, not only would it be insanely difficult to hold on to more than a single rep without straps on this exercise, but also having a less secure grip on the bar means less of the power generated by your hips and legs is going to transfer into it. Straps offer a more secure grip, which means ultimately you're going to be able to create a stronger training stimulus for your hips, legs, and back, which is the point of this exercise. Not only that, but you'll also be able to handle significantly more volume, which is going to give you better results in the long term. And unless you're an Olympic lifter, you're never going to need to hold onto a bar strapless with a snatch grip. So you might as well use straps for this exercise and reap its full benefits. With your hips and knees fully extended and vertical momentum having been imparted onto the barbell, it's going to begin driving upwards. During this time, you should use your arms as guides, just enough to keep the bar snug to the body. You don't want it to wander away from you, otherwise you're going to get yanked forward when gravity decides to fight back and pull the bar back to the ground. Now, as the bar approaches its apex, it's time to call upon the upper body to finish the pull. The momentum carrying the barbell upward has ever so briefly rendered it weightless. You should take advantage of this weightlessness by shrugging your traps as powerfully as possible and using the muscles of your upper back to give the bar one final upward tug. Now, on my original video about using the high pull to get big traps, I had numerous people comment to me that this exercise is a good way to impinge your shoulders. But I really don't see how that's possible. For one, it's the same motion as a snatch, and I've never heard of anyone impinging their shoulder during a snatch, or heard anyone ever even complain that that's a possibility. Two, even if this were possible, it wouldn't be the fault of the exercise, but rather it would be a mobility issue, and the wide grip drastically reduces the mobility requirements. Try this. Just stand there with your arms at shoulder width and raise your hands up like you're doing an upright row. Now, widen your arms to where they would be during a snatch grip and do the same thing. Do you feel the difference? You should have noticed that any stress that existed at the shoulders was shifted onto the upper back when you widened your arms. And finally, none of what I just said is even relevant anyway because you shouldn't be using your arms to pull the bar up that last bit. The bar is weightless in your arms during this time, and you should be using the muscles of your upper back to elevate the scapula. So anyone who somehow manages to get a shoulder impingement from this exercise is either highly immobile or doesn't know what the hell they're doing, plain and simple. Now that you've executed the pull, all that's left to do is control the descent. If you're doing multiple reps, you simply need to guide the bar back down onto your thighs and flex the hips and knees upon contact in order to mitigate the impact forces. You don't want to resist the free fall of the barbell once it's reached its peak height and has begun falling. You just want to guide it back down and then set up for the next rep. Once you become more proficient, you can experiment with performing the reps rhythmically. This will ultimately force you to use less weight, but it's a bit of a different stimulus. It forces you to remain in much better control of the barbell, ensuring that it stays close to the body at all times, and it forces you to learn how to absorb the impact better and turn around and expel that force concentrically, all in a very short time frame. It's almost plyometric when done this way, and I'm betting this will have more carryover to general athleticism. One last thing, if you can't pull the weight as high as the nipple line, it's technically no longer a high pull, but rather a mid or low pull. Now, there's nothing wrong with going heavier and not pulling the bar as high, and it is in fact a valid form of training. But I recommend you start off with weights that are light enough that you can pull them to the nipple line and become proficient and comfortable with the movement before you start loading it up heavier and heavier. And remember, even when you do master the exercise, it's still a good idea to incorporate a mix of heavier and lighter pulls because as you move across the spectrum, you'll be producing different amounts of acceleration against the varied resistances and thus producing more or less power and covering different points across the speed strength spectrum. Anyway, that's all I got for now, guys. I hope those of you who requested this video have found it helpful. If you have any questions about it, feel free to shoot them my way. Other than that, please be sure to hit the like button, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and make sure you leave me some love in the comments down below. And as always, if you enjoy the content I produce, please share your favorite stuff somewhere, and together, let's make hashtag Project 100K a reality. Keep training hard, and I will catch you guys next time.